Hey, Basic MTB here. We're going to do a component tune-up on our Walmart bike. This is the Hyper Explorer 29-inch double suspension. And first, we're going to do the rear derailleur. I had noticed while testing out the shifting, the high gear is fine. That one falls into place nicely, but the low gear does not. See, if you notice, it kind of likes to sit on top of the gear right here, and that's because the rear derailleur is going too far to the left. And that's pretty dangerous, because what will happen is the chain will fall off and go behind the cassette, and it can get stuck between the wheel and the cassette, and that's just not good. So what we're gonna do is grab our M17 and adjust the low gear limit. So because this goes too far to the left, we're going to tighten this screw probably about a half turn. All right. So we're going to shift down. Let's go back. That looks like we might have got it on the first try. Go back and forth a few times, make sure it aligns properly. Okay, that looks pretty good. So if you find that it's going too far to the left, you're going to tighten the limit screw. If it's not going far enough, maybe you can't quite get it to go on that lowest gear, you're going to loosen this one. And then same thing goes for your high gear adjustment. In and out will alter how far the highest gear limit is. So now we're going to do the rear brakes. You might have noticed there's a bit of a rubbing sound when I spin the wheel. And that's because this caliper is not on perfectly straight. If you look in the light gaps here, you notice that on the right side, it's kind of tilted to the right. There's a little more light on the top of the on the pad than on the bottom. We want that to be perfectly straight, perfectly parallel between the pad and the rotor. So what we're gonna do, we're gonna loosen these two bolts here. These are both 5mm Allens, and that allows a little bit of wiggle. It's supposed to wiggle. These are some kind of like ball and socket washers. That allows us to align the caliper to the rotor. We're also going to preemptively tighten this Allen on the inside, which will move the inner pad closer to the rotor. So we're going to undo this later, but we need it to be tightened right now. And you'll see why in a sec. I'm going to give that about one full turn, and that should be rubbing pretty badly right now. Yeah, give it a little bit more. It's kind of awkward to get in here because you're in between the spokes of the tire, but a multi-tool is actually a little easier to get in there than like a screwdriver or a socket would be. All right. So that's good. I'm gonna take a piece of just scrap Velcro. You can use a zip tie or maybe just some tape, that'll be fine. And we're gonna squeeze the handle pretty tightly, and then take our Velcro or whatever you have handy and just make sure it's held in place. So the wheel should not move. Okay, we're good, it doesn't. So because the calipers are squeezed in, that means the caliper is aligned to the rotor. So while it is aligned, we're going to tighten up these bolts. Do it pretty snug. Don't strip them out, but enough that they're not going to move around on you. We can take our Velcro off. And what should happen is the inner pad, the one that we adjusted, should actually be rubbing right now, and it is. If you look for the light gaps, it's kind of hard to see on the camera. There's a very thin gap on the left side, but the right side there's no gap, which is why you hear it rubbing just a little bit. And like I said, we did that on purpose because now we're going to go in there and loosen, which is actually pulling that pad back in. just a little bit. So when I did this originally, I turned it in about 2 turns, and I'm going to turn it out about 1 turn. Okay, it looks pretty good. So I have just a sliver of light between the pads and the rotors. I don't hear rubbing anymore. Let's see if the brakes still work as they should. Yep. Okay. Brakes feel pretty good. We're gonna do the same thing on the front. Yep. And if you can hear this, I'll try and get closer. Hear that little scraping sound? If you look right down here, if you can see the sliver of light between the pads and the rotor is not straight, and it's just barely, the pads are just barely grazing the rotor. So give that a turn loose, give that a turn loose, go to the inside, give this about a turn tighter. Awkward angle, but that's okay. Just take your time. All right. So we're gonna grab our Velcro or tape or zip tie, whatever. I'm gonna squeeze on this handle, the front brake, tie it up nice and tight. The wheel does not move as expected. Tighten these bolts back down. Nice and snug. Hey, tip by the way, if you do like using these multi-tools, keep a little rubber thing on there while you're using it. It helps keep stuff from sliding out while it's in your hand. This thing likes to turn sometimes. It can be a little annoying, but if you leave the rubber piece on, it just all stays put. Works a lot better. All right, so we're gonna take the Velcro off. And we expect some slight rubbing. And we're gonna fix that by loosening this inner pad we'll start with half a turn, and then we'll see how it is from there. So we're gonna turn this to the left, about a half turn. Yeah, looks like that's all it took. All right, give it a spin, hit the brakes. Feels pretty good. The handle pulls a little further than I wanted it to. The rear, that's about how I want it to feel. I want it to be fully engaged when this is about parallel to the handle. That's just my personal preference. Some people like it to engage really early. Some people like it to, engage further down. I just kind of like that sweet spot because it's enough space for my fingers to be in there and not crunch my hand. This one's a little too far. If I had my hand in there, it might hit a finger if I grab it really hard. So I'm gonna tweak that by adjusting these screws here. I can do that by giving this a couple turns looser to the left. That's gonna pull the cable. Then I'm gonna turn this black one down, and that should be about right. Yeah, that's about right. So now it engages fully right when it's parallel, so it's not gonna hit my fingers. Sorry, bad angle. There we go. Cool. Yeah, that's about it for the brake and the derailleur. It's really not that bad. All you needed was a 5mm Allen and a Phillips head screwdriver, and you're good to go. I'm probably going to take apart these axles and make sure they're really well greased, just so I get a little less friction. I don't really trust the factory grease job. So yeah, stay tuned. Cool. Thanks for watching and have a great day.